Critics are saying Batman Arkham Origins is the same old thing. That Arkham Origins doesn't break ground with new ideas. Batman Arkham Origins is a deeply predictable game, says GameSpot. Perhaps the developers were too focused on not breaking all those wonderful toys, or perhaps they were bound to a tight deadline, but the game feels slightly flat as a result, says Eurogamer. Metacritic gives the game a 79 on Xbox 360 and a 77 on PlayStation 3, according to critic reviews. Is this how we see Arkham Origins, my friends? Not me! This is my review of Batman Arkham Origins. The game takes place on Christmas Eve, while children are snuggled in their beds with thoughts of sugar plums dancing in their head. Black Mask is breaking into the Blackgate Penitentiary to release Julian Gregory Day, aka Calendar Man. After the intervention of the GCPD and Batman, Gotham City is on mandatory lockdown, forcing citizens to stay indoors as hired goons take the streets. So let's start there. The game admittedly feels abandoned, only inhabited by villains and henchmen. There are certain instances where this is not the case. In the very first tutorial stage, you have to break into the GCR tower to enable the radio tower, so the Batwing's navigation will work. Inside, you find various workers being held hostage by henchmen. But it's still not in the streets of Gotham. If it were, I think it would be a welcomed addition to see fewer baddies and more citizens that are out finishing their Christmas shopping only to be mugged and rescued by the fabled Batman. During this mission, you are introduced to the new Detective Mode. The new Detective Mode incorporates previous versions, as well as a new replay system. The replay system allows you to reconstruct the crime scene and play it backwards and forwards. The beauty of being able to see a crime that has just happened in detail is refreshing and inspiring. It makes you feel like the greatest detective in the world when he was younger and still learning how to deconstruct a crime scene. We are also introduced to a recurring character, Edward Enigma, aka the Riddler. Enigma, as he's called, has hacked the radio towers and hired thugs to assist him in making Gotham a city inhabited by smarter, more intelligent citizens. The main story continues with you finding the whereabouts of the Penguin by hacking into his communications network. Once Penguin is discovered, you have to face his henchmen and take on 2 of the 8 assassins, the Electrocutioner and Deathstroke. The character introductions are wonderful. Each introduction illustrates each character's personality near perfectly. From hilarity to astonishment, you understand who you're being introduced to immediately. The cutscenes alone in this game will keep you on your toes and are filled with feelings. You will stop and give all your attention. Even when the cutscenes come to an end, I feel myself saying, "No, I want more!" Which also makes going into a fight or back into the game world a little jarring. Not graphically, and the transitions aren't sudden, but you are suddenly faced with the reality that you are back in control and you're faced with a new challenge. Aside from the graphic quality of cutscenes, the game graphics and the textures are phenomenal. The texture quality is so clean and so detailed that you just want to scour every inch of the game to see all the smallest little things. From the Batcave to the city, you will find yourself trying to investigate some of the most iconic places. Along with the graphics, the animations for the most part are spot on. Characters move and act like you would expect them to, defining their personalities and inviting you to listen to everything they have to say. Speaking of talking, the voice acting is as gripping and on par with the previous games. Alfred is as dry and hilarious with his witticism. Riddler is still madly intelligent. But what you're wondering is if Batman and the Joker sound like they should. The answer is yes. Robert Craig Smith embodies a young Batman. Although not the same as Kevin Conroy's Batman, he imbues the idea that it is a younger, more angry and naive Batman. Troy Baker's Joker is superb. If I hadn't already known that it was a different actor, I would be inclined to think it was Mark Hamill himself. Every character's voice looks to match them perfectly. Except for Killer Croc.
I caught your scent.
I don't know. It just sounds a little weird. Roger Craig Smith's younger Batman voice really adds to the idea and the plot of this game. The idea that the game centers around a younger, less intuitive Batman. The addition of the altered detective mode intensifies the immersion, that you aren't as trained as later incarnations of Batman and have to rely more on your technology more than ever before. Don't be mistaken either. Your gadgets are key in this game. Whereas in other games, gadgets were mostly needed to interact with puzzles, this game encourages you to use your gadgets more often in combat, if not sometimes forcing you to. The combat in this game still has the amazing free-flow combat that the previous games did, but Batman feels heavier and slower. Even so, your hits feel stronger and more aggressive. Each hit feels like it would hurt. They have also done away with the last hit booms. In previous games, final hits would emit a loud boom, letting you know that the previous enemy was dealt with. This time around, it leaves you with an uncertainty that you've finished the job, and that is perfect. The combat has always given insight to Batman. The other games showed that you were playing a seasoned Batman who was confident. This time around, with the combat feeling slower and heavy hitting, you feel like an angry, more intimidated Batman. Now, why am I making such a big deal over this being a younger Batman? Why? Because people are going into this game not really understanding the idea that this is an earlier version of Batman. This whole game takes place only in his second year of crime fighting. Only in his second year! This is the first time he has even met the Joker, not to mention that Arkham Asylum, for the most part, isn't even used to house Batman's greatest villains. The fact is, this is not the same Batman as before. You're not the fighter you are in previous games, and the story is not going to be as chaotically beautiful as before. The story has to be more introductory and intimate to the character. The underlying story is Batman is being recognized as a hero, not just a myth or a vigilante. It is also about Batman meeting some of his most iconic villains and coming to terms with the idea that this will never end. Gordon also realizes that more and more villains will find their way out of the woodworks, and Batman will have to be there to face them. That is why, granted, the story isn't as good as Arkham City, or even as close to Arkham Asylum, it's still a good story. It does what it's meant to do, and believing it was going to be more than it is was asking for disappointment. To be honest though, the timing is a little off. Doing a prequel for a set of stories of this magnitude feels a little repetitive. Arkham Asylum started off with the idea that we already knew the characters, and we got to learn the stories of the asylum instead. Arkham City continued that story with grandiose scale, continuing to hammer in the idea that just how insane Batman's villains actually are. Doing a prequel for a set of stories with no need for a prequel doesn't really fit into the puzzle. But honestly, other than the name, the game has barely any connection to the previous games. It's a double-edged sword, really. The game probably would have been better off not referencing the previous titles and changing the name. But had it done that, with the new developer and the new voice actors, the game would not be given the recognition it deserves and would be called a ripoff of the original titles. It really is its own standalone, and that's what people should think when going into the game. Me being a comic book fan, I have seen dozens of interpretations of Batman. Every writer has their own interpretations of the character, and they are all valid. That is the reality of the situation. Batman is not just a character. It's not just a game. It's not just a movie. It's a story. Batman has become less of a being and more of a concept. Telling a story of Batman is like telling folklore. You may play the game from Batman's perspective, but this is a story told by somebody else. The sum of my review is the graphics are fantastic, the characters are engaging, the combat is spot on, the story is as advertised. You're Batman and you're fighting assassins to save your life and find out what Black Mask is up to. The real problems I had with this game are Batman's gadgets. You start off with things like the Batclaw, the cryptographic sequencer, and the grapnel accelerator, the predecessor to the grapnel boost that you get in Arkham City. Now, I can understand the reasoning behind these items, and the fact that you have them now works in the continuum of the games. But they feel out of place. I feel like something should have been put in their place to fulfill the same objectives. Also, you get electric gauntlets. Let me say that again. Electric gauntlets. Gloves that are electrified. Why doesn't Batman incorporate this into his normal gear? It's beyond me. Another problem I had with this game is the lack of citizens. As I spoke before, I think that would have made the city feel more alive. The game is wonderful despite its minor problems. It runs extremely well on PC despite a few bugs here and there. If you enjoyed previous games, you will enjoy this one as well. Just don't go into the game looking for the same story as the other two. Look at it like a whole new story. So, I give this game a solid thumbs up, pat on the back. Because guess what, Metacritic? I don't give ratings. So thank you guys for checking out my review of Batman Arkham Origins. And if you guys want to check out the game, it is currently on Steam for $49.99 or your regional equivalent. And I hope you guys enjoy the game just as much as I am. It's a wonderful game. So until next time, guys, thanks for joining me, thanks for checking out my review, and I will see you all next time.